All right, everyone. So in the last exercise, we learned how to build a basic rig that you guys can set up and teleport. Now I'm going to show you guys how you can kind of adjust or customize the teleporter itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the ray indicator interactor, and this is everything's already kind of set up for here, so you don't have to touch any of this, and I wouldn't because it may cause it not to work. But I'm going to go under where it says XR Interactor Line Visual. So what this actually does is it states the what does the ray look like. So right now, when you shoot it off, it is a red line. This is the line weight, how thick it is. If you want a thinner line or a thicker line, I could bring it all the way up to 0.05. Okay. Some other things that so I'm making my line thicker, the ray thicker. You can also change the valid versus the invalid. The valid is like, when you point it at something and it turns white, which means you can teleport. That's the color. So right now it's set to white. If I click on this is actually a gradient. And if you want to, I could set this to a color. So let's say I wanted to set it to blue. I'm going to set this to like a dark blue. And then this is the color stop. This is just like color stops in Photoshop or Illustrator. And I'm going to set this to like a light blue. So what this means is when I point at something and it's valid, it will now turn blue as opposed to being white. I'm going to do the same for the invalid. Invalid defaultly is usually red. Maybe I want to make it like a green. So I'm going to set that to like a dark green and then use this color stop to set it to like a light green. Okay, something like that. All right, so you can do that. Another thing you can do, and this one's actually set up under the indicator, is what type of raycast it is. So under line type, the traditional old way used to be like a straight line that just, the line goes straight. The new ones kind of go into what's called a projectile curve. And this one, the line kind of arcs a little bit instead of going purely straight, and the same with Bezier. So if you want to try different ones out, it's kind of a stylistic thing, whether you want straight lines or curved lines. All right, so what I would do is save that and then build it. And then what you would see is now when you use it, they're going to be, the rays are going to be much thicker than they would have defaultly been, and they're going to be green and blue as the not or the invalid versus valid, as opposed to yellow or white and red. Okay. All right, another thing we can do is we can add what's called a reticle. Okay. A reticle is what shows up at the end of the ray. So for instance, you guys might remember when you were in framevr.io, when you would put the ray on the ground would turn into like a little circle with like a little point on it, right? So that graphic is a reticle. Okay, it's something that comes at the end of it. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys. We're going to build one, and I'm going to show you guys a way to do this. So a reticle is usually made out of a model. So I have a couple of models here. I have one called Box, which is literally, I made this in Blender really quickly. I'm going to use one called Crosshair. And if I pull it out, it's kind of this triangle crosshair that I built in Blender. Okay. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to make this into a prefab. And the reason why I'm going to do that is if I were to pull this directly into that reticle slot, I wouldn't be able to resize it or move it or anything. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to shrink. I want to resize this because it's too big. I want this to be really, really small. All right. So now that this is I put this is in my scene. I have a folder called prefab. Remember, prefab is a reusable item. I'm just going to drag this in, and this is going to make it a prefab. Okay. And now that it's a prefab, I'm going to delete this out of my scene because I don't need it anymore. And what I'm going to do is go to my ray indicator, go to reticle, and I can actually now drag this in. And if I were to preview this, you would see that crosshair at the end. Okay. So keep in mind that when you set up your line interactor in your reticle, you actually have to do it for both, or it's not defaultly for both controllers. So if I went over here, you would see I have to set this up as well. So maybe if you wanted to, you could have it be different colors. I think that might be a little confusing from a user experience kind of point of view, but you could do it if you wanted to. I'm going to try to, match it. This is why you might want to save those colors. So I'm going to kind of do this similarly. You could set it as a preset and bring it back later if you want to. I probably should have done that with my old ones, but I'm lazy. These will be close enough. Let's save it. Just in case I want to come back to it later. And I want my line to be thicker. And I'm going to add that reticle. Okay. All right, I want to save that and try it out. And you should see that both your array indicators are now thicker. They're different colors. And we get that little reticle at the end of it. All right, everyone. So you can see I got much thicker rays now, and that they're green. Starts at the darker green and goes to the lighter green at the end. You can see if I do this here, they're turning blue as opposed to turning, traditionally they were white. You might also see the reticle at the end of it. It might be a little easier if I turn around. So there's my reticle, okay? Now, if those are too big, I could go back to the prefab and I could turn them off, or not turn them off. Sorry, I could go back and I could resize them, okay? So this is you customizing your array interactors.